Welcome. In this video, we will briefly trace the development of aesthetics in Persian poetry. Poetry is a form of literature that uses aesthetic and rhythmic qualities of language. Aesthetics is the study of beauty and taste. The word comes from the Greek word aesthetikos, referring to sensory perception and understanding. Beauty is what we love because we know that knowledge is the outcome of some internal sense on our part, approved by us, and the reason for such an approval is the sunlight rays radiating onto it from the primary origin. A Persian poem can be regarded as an object of art in itself, crafted to please the eye as well as the ear. But behind the art, there are rules and techniques that already appear well established. Poetry is the fifth art regarded the most over all the other. Let's trace the poetry's position as the fifth art. The art of architecture as the first one in the course of human history, whose materials are mud and masonry, harsh materials giving grace to vaguest art. Having received his suitable dwelling place, humans started thinking of worshipping, which made the needing matter for the next art, that is to say, making statues. The third type of art, coming after architecture and statues, would be painting, whose building materials are originally colors. The best painting are those showing the rules of sense and the authority of soul over the body and the matter more evidently. The fourth art is music. Its building materials are sound and tune. It's higher than painting because it has fully brushed aside the material world. It has no dimensions, its spiritual aspect being extremely puissant, for the sense of hearing is more spiritual than the sense of seeing. The fifth art is poetry, that is higher than music. Its material is wording, which is the most delicate, the most excellent, and the most contemplative human effects, whose form and soul is much more comprehensive than any other. Poetry is a bodily art whose origin is spiritual. The inspiration force within it is as strong as music. It is as clearly visible as statues. It includes within itself pictures expressing human history. The medium to poetry is imagination. Imagination itself would be the medium between the body and the soul. To comprehend beauty in classical Persian poetry, we have no way but to deal with the beautiful beloved and investigate the love that has taken to its own way out of beauty. We must go to ghazals and the romantic Persian poesy stories. In the short range of the present video, we will just touch the hem of all classical periods Persian ghazals and their contents to perform our duty of studying aesthetics as the link between beauty and literature. In practice, in terms of rhythm, one shifted from pre-Islamic poetry relying on alternating stresses, periodically returning to the iktis, to a poetry based on the variations of long and short syllables as in Arabic poetry. In the poems of Rodaki, the new technique appears firmly and constant. Court poets ever since Rodaki had to present themselves before an audience and prove their worth. The listeners were able to judge the poet's art and technique instantly, and they especially appreciated his ability to improvise in public. Improvisation could spell immediate recognition and advancement for a great poet such as Faroki. Art, technique, and improvisation were venues through which the poet encountered the expectations of his audience and drawing on his own erudition to exert his authority, ventured to play in part, reshaping the prevailing poetic traditions. In the early style of Persian poetry, the fact that kings' characters were firmly biased towards eulogy, there was much more demand for qasidde as compared with ghazals. Kings would give gifts like 1,000 coins of gold as the award to a qasidde. Beauty was natural and its description was simple. There was little gap between the literal and the main meaning. Lyrical poetry in this period was more of description of the beloved's beauty and the repercussions of the happy love on the part of the lover than of description of separation, depression, distancing pain, and complaining of the beloved's oppression. The majority of smiles reminded one of the pitched battlefield, and the Ghanzavi's era's beloved represented some vista onto the war theatre. For instance, her hair was much of ropes, coats of chain. Her face was like a shield. Her eyelashes were spear heads and arrows. Her eyes were plundering and killing. Briefly speaking, the period's beloved was not spiritual and transcendental. She did not go beyond sexual drives. Substituted by thoughts of religion, mysticism provides the suitable bedding for conversation and developments in Persian stories and romantic ghazals. And the remit of beauty's description in all its glittering manifestations was fully expanded. Sufism and mysticism demanded wholehearted love towards the transcendental beloved that was unknown, invisible, primarily eternal, theologically eternal, and far away from any axis. The period was the start of the era when love and sorrow and beauty were considered three companions. This epoch's poet was focused on the hair's curl rather than on the hair itself. He was not satisfied by the bow-like construct of eyebrows. He fell in love with the backing of eyebrows. Persian poetry was gaining more and more inspiration from mysticism. In the 6th century, ghazal became differing from one of the era past, bifurcating into two branches of mystic and romantic: art and literature. The common side of art and literature is getting inspiration from beauty and both mimicking nature and humanity. It is the artist's genius which creatively presents the mimicry. Of Persian poetry formats, it is ghazal which is closest in content and aimed to the core of art. The most important topic in lyric poetry is human being whose emotions towards his fellow human as the symbol of perfection and beauty never dropped off the view. Lyric poetry pictures human soul and ideals. Lyric poetry is the spokesperson of humankind's spirit while being at the same time a picture of man's relationship to the mother nature. Amongst various lyric formats, the Persian ghazal came out even more artistic when it brought into its scope every concept of art viewed as matter for love and mysticism. It saw the ugly and thought of it as beautiful, as it thought of poisonous thistle as sugar, so that, like a nightingale, it could accept bushes of thorns as flowers. It appears that human beings cannot come to the peace of mind until and as long as they have objectivized some form of the ideals they believe in. And what else, other than art, could be the suitable medium for imagining any idealistic spirit within the matrix of matter? Art would be the most proper, the most pleasant garment to the stature of soul. In the midst of it all, art of poetry, especially of lyric type, which is the product of social emotion and sense, has the largest share among all different types of art to express the responsibility thereof in the vast ocean of literature. All art's mission is to eternalize joy out of beauty, the beauty whose true source is within humans and the nature. Art is a kind of salvation to make man free of willing and wishing, to emblazon humankind with the coat of arms of knowing oneself and flourishing all logical, transcendental aptitude of humanity. If we consider science as a torch to light the path of human life, an artist's genius ought to be deemed as the sunlight shining all over the world. Thank you.